Hi, Paul Dolan. I was the race caller here at the Sunshine Coast Turf Club at Corbould Park for 22 years, from 1996 until I hung up the binoculars in 2018. You couldn't just walk into a metropolitan track and say, I want to be a caller. You had to start out in the bush, so I approached some of the country clubs and was just lucky there was a vacancy there. A guy needed a helper, a guy named Barry Green, and I became his right-hand man. The Gold Coast needed an assistant and I was appointed to that in 1979, and I was calling there on a fairly regular basis. When this track opened in 1985, the club kindly invited me to be a guest caller. They had an invitation race callers day for day number 1, and very kindly they gave me a field of 19. It was the Russ Hinds graduation stakes with a field of 19. I'd never called a field of 19. This lovely big track here can take that many, and Shane Dye rode the winner. It was a big thrill. I was one of about 16,000 people here on that opening day in July 85. I think most of the guys operate the same way. When the horses come into the enclosure, I try and learn them 2 at a time, associate the name with the colour. You know, King Latimer's Trevor Miller, and I'll say the name over and over and again, and I'll say red and blue. King Latimer's Trevor Miller, red and blue. Then go on to another one. Of course, if there's 18 of them, you've got to do that 9 times. The bigger the field, the more difficult, just the more time you have to put into it. But it's basically associating the name of the horse with the colours of the jockey's silks. I try and lift at about the 300 metre mark to the next level of excitement, and then from the 200 home.
First Crush and Rocket on board. They hit the wire. First Crush just in front. 10 out of 10, D Brown.
I don't think anyone would argue Winks is the best horse to ever set foot on Corbould Park, Caloundra, in winning the 2015 Sunshine Coast Guineas, ridden by Larry Cassidy. A lot of people will say, oh, Hugh Bowman must have rode it, but it was Larry Cassidy that day. I was doing interviews here in year 2000, Caloundra Cup Day. I went over to Chris Muntz and he had a ride in the next race. I said, what do you think of the track? He said, it's the best track I've ever ridden on. Now this was in July 2000. 6 months prior to that, he'd won the Melbourne Cup on Jezebel in 1999. I said, hang on, you've won the Melbourne Cup 6 months ago. Surely Flemington would be the best track you've ever ridden on. He said, I'm telling you, this is the best.